So I'm going to continue talking about equanimity. I've been sitting on this for a few weeks now. And I think I'm just going to take this approach of going very slowly through this. Last time I talked about the category of the stranger. So when you do the 7-point cause and effect meditation, you start off with cultivating equanimity. And the end goal with that practice and exchanging self and others is to eventually develop bodhicitta, which we all agree is a most beautiful mental state. But I have to really get this equanimity part figured out first. And this is taking a close look at how we slot people into friend, enemy, and stranger in the blink of an eye, really. So last time I talked about the challenging person, the difficult person, the quote-unquote enemy. And today I'm going to spend some time just talking about and asking all of us to think about the category of stranger. So the definition of stranger can't be posited. Oh, so the definition of stranger can be posited. Posit that definition. You can just yell it out. What is a stranger to you? What comes to mind when you think stranger?
Someone you don't know. Someone you're not acquainted with.
Someone you don't know, someone who hasn't harmed or helped you. What was that?
Oh, someone you're not acquainted.
You're not acquainted with. A friend you haven't met. Dave. You are really moving along in your practice. Wow. So it's kind of a strange word, stranger. Strange. Stranger. It comes from a Latin root meaning foreign or alien. And if you're a French speaker, étrange, which again means external or foreign. So how many people here, don't worry, the video camera's not going to be pointed at you, they won't see you, have a Facebook account? And you can just call out numbers. How many friends do you have? Thousands. 400. Well, if you're at 4,000 or 1,000 or 400, let's think about this for a minute. Right now, there's more than 7 billion, we're just going to talk about people today. There's more than 7 billion people on the planet. A shocking statistic, I don't know if this is, I'll have to check this out, but there's one website that suggests by the year 2025, so in 6 years from now, we will cross the 8 billion mark. So let's just go back to 7 billion right now. How many people in your friend category are close friends? Just think about that. You don't have to call it out. And then these gradations of friend that eventually sort of move into strangers, so interesting to think about. What does it take for someone to move from the stranger category to the friend category? What does it take? If they like your video?
Or your comments.
Common interests. It would be interesting for us to sit down and write down what does it take for someone to cross that line in the sand, stranger to friend. I'll bet in a lot of cases it started off with someone just smiling at us or returning a smile. Might that be true? I did an experiment years ago before I was really a Buddhist, and I was running along the North Saskatchewan River in Edmonton pretty much every day for a while, and then in the winter I would ski. And I was often with a friend, and so we started this experiment of, let's say hello to everyone we pass and smile at them. This is Edmonton, okay? Edmonton, Alberta. I'm not 6'8". I don't weigh 350 pounds. I don't think I look too imposing, right? So it was amazing. I would say after about a year of doing this experiment, 20% of the people that I smiled at and said hello to did not respond. They would look down, or they would look away, or they'd speed up. So, it's kind of tricky to get that movement from stranger to friend sometimes with people. So how to sort of work with this amorphous group in our meditation of strangers when there's just so many of them. Right now, in my spiritual practice, I don't have the bandwidth to feel for 7 billion people. I can't do it. I think if I had the bandwidth to sort of feel deeply for the suffering of 500 people, I'd be quite pleased with myself. But 7 billion people? I just can't do it yet. So what can I do? So I think we can just go back and realize that when we were arrived in the womb, did we know the person? We didn't know that person whose womb we arrived in, right? And they didn't know us. And then think of what happened as we were born. We get shot out into this environment. Maybe we're pulled out by forceps. I hear that they still spank us. Is that true, Venerable Jigme? You get smacked anymore? Not so much. It might have happened when we were born, though? Okay, so some total stranger smacks us a good one. And then all of these people are crowding around, right? And then 2 people, if you have 2 parents, maybe 1, they're touching you all the time. And we don't have the capacity to say, stop. All we can do is say, we can cry. And so here we are, we land in this life amongst total strangers. Now, for the parent, it's the same thing, right? Who is this kid? Right? Who is this? But actually, probably as soon as the woman knew that she was pregnant, already my child has been applied to that little being. And then when we emerge, for sure, that's my child. My child. No longer a stranger, kind of a stranger. On some days, more of a stranger than others. But certainly, immediately we're embraced. So we came into this world knowing nobody, unless you're a special person. Now, I don't want to insult those of you in here who are special. I can't tell. And if you are a special person, you're doing a really good job of being ordinary. I totally get it. So thank you. But for some of you who aren't ordinary, you may remember all these people in this room. 30 years ago, I knew none of you. 30 years ago, you were a stranger to me. How many people were born less than 30 years ago? Okay, so a couple of you in here, maybe I knew you in your last life. Maybe you were driving me around somewhere. I don't know. So just the fact, Dave, what was your category of stranger? Friend you haven't met yet. We can start working our mind towards that. Now that's a challenging one. The other way I start working this with strangers is just to realize what His Holiness and Venerable Children always tell us. Everyone is just like me. They just want happiness. They don't want to suffer. And when I go into airports, I make a point of looking around and looking at these people. And sometimes the judgmental, sometimes, oh, come on. The judgmental mind pops up constantly. I see someone disciplining in their child that I deem inappropriate. I see a couple talking to each other in very short ways. My mind jumps up. But then we just think, you know what? I don't know their whole story. I don't know what's precipitated this, but there's something going on that I just don't know about. They just want to be happy. They don't have the skills right in that moment to do it in a way that Samton deems appropriate. But I can see that we're all struggling. Just like me, all day long, they're meeting with things they don't want. They're not getting what they do want. They're being separated from people and loved ones in not the time frame that they wanted. There's constant disappointments throughout the day. And so I can't bring in 7 billion people right now, but I can start looking at people one by one and just looking at them and trying to imagine what might be going on for them that can make my heart warm up and open to them. Right now, so another good practice for chipping away at this 7 billion population of human beings that we want to have a warmth and understanding for is just to open the news, right? So right this minute in Japan, a typhoon has slammed into that country, and there's more than 2.8 million people who are being encouraged to evacuate. Can you imagine? Here we are, we're sitting waiting for lunch, and if Samton stops talking pretty quick, we'll get there sooner because it looks very beautiful. But so we don't have to deal with the fact that right now there's floods and landslides and an earthquake. We're just sitting here, but there's people on the planet right now dealing with the fact that their lives are in danger. 20,000 homes in Southern California are potentially going to be burned down this weekend. We don't have to deal with that right now. Some people overnight were shot with a gun in this country. I don't know how many. So there's families right now dealing with that kind of loss. Someone this past week, thousands of people all over the world, received some bad news from their health practitioner. News they didn't want to hear. Lives are totally changed. And so I think as we start looking at people and not just having this amorphous stranger category, but trying to see people one at a time and saying, this person is just like me. They're dealing with things all day long that they don't want. They have a body and a mind under the control of karma and afflicted mental states. And until they meet the Dharma, they will have no tools to work with this state that they're in. And even when they when they've met the Dharma, we're all still struggling trying to understand and implement these teachings. So as I continue to work at Equanimity and try and reduce these categories of friend, enemy, and stranger, I will keep coming back again and again to what Dave said so brilliantly about, what is the definition of a stranger? Someone who is eventually going to be a friend. So I'd like to close with a couple of paragraphs from His Holiness the Dalai Lama in a book on compassion that was translated and edited by Jeffrey Hopkins. This is a goal that I have. I don't know if I'll make it in this life, but certainly, I hope, in a future life. And he says this: whenever I speak with people, I do so with the sense that I am a member of their family. Although you and I may be meeting for the first time, I accept you as a friend. I do not, as a Buddhist, nor as a Tibetan, nor as the Dalai Lama. I do so not as a Buddhist, not as a Tibetan, nor as a Dalai Lama. I do so as one human being speaking with another. I hope that at this moment you are thinking of yourself as a human being rather than as an American, an Asian, a European, an African, a Canadian, or member of any particular country. These loyalties are secondary. If you and I find common ground as human beings, we can communicate on a basic level. If I think I'm a monk or I'm a Buddhist, these are peripheral in comparison to my nature as a human being. To be human is basic, the foundation from which we all arise. You are born as a human being, and that cannot change until you die. Everything else, whether you are educated or uneducated, young or old, rich or poor, is secondary. In truth, you and I already know each other profoundly as human beings who share the same basic goals. We all seek happiness, and we do not want suffering. Let's think about that today.